They laid a foul. That's his first and the team's first.
All right, that is what we're talking about today. Not the engine that costs more than the GDP of a small African nation, not the magic aerodynamics cooked up by wizards in some secret lab. No, we're talking about the most important, the most brilliant, and let's be honest, the most criminally underrated part in the history of the automobile. We're talking about the brakes. Because in the beginning, things were a little catastrophic. The first cars were basically motorized carriages, and while the engineers sort of figured out the how do we make this thing go part, the question of, okay, how the heck do we stop this thing was answered far less elegantly. The first brakes were ripped straight from the horse and buggy playbook. It was just a block of wood, maybe wrapped in some leather, that you jam against the wheel with a big lever and a prayer. And the effectiveness? About the same as trying to stop a charging rhino by throwing a hamburger at it. And in the rain? Well, let's just say every trip turned into an uncontrolled slide towards the nearest tree. Or bar, whichever came first. And this ridiculous situation continued until 1902, when an enterprising Frenchman by the name of Louis Renault, yes, that Renault, finally thought to himself, c'est ridicule. This is ridiculous. He was sick and tired of his brakes getting clogged with mud, soaked with water, and basically only working when they felt like it. So he invented something genius. He hid the entire mechanism inside the wheel. The drum brake. The brake shoes now pressed against the drum from the inside. They were shielded from mud, water, and the curious stares of peasants. It was a breakthrough. For the first time in human history, a driver could hit the pedal and be, well, reasonably sure the car was actually going to slow down. Brilliant. Now, of course, hydraulics weren't a thing yet, so to get all four of those drums to work together, engineers had to rig up this insane contraption of cables, rods, and levers. And that, as you can imagine, was of a problem. The whole setup was as complicated as the American healthcare system and about as reliable. Cables would stretch, they'd rust, and you'd end up with one wheel breaking while the other three were still enthusiastically carrying you towards your next adventure. To put it simply, the main braking system back then was basically your car's handbrake today. Go on, try stopping your car from speed with just the handbrake. Actually, you know what? Don't. Seriously, do not try that. And that's when an American steps onto the stage, Malcolm Lockheed. Yes, you know that name from airplanes, but before all that, he gave us magic. Hydraulics. He basically said, to hell with cables, let's use a fluid. You press the pedal, it pushes a piston, that piston shoves an incompressible fluid down a bunch of tubes, and that fluid, simultaneously and with perfectly equal pressure, slams the brake shoes against the drums on all four wheels. Genius! Just pure, unadulterated physics. And so, from the 1920s and for all time, we get to stop when we need to, all thanks to the magic of Mr. Lockheed. But people wanted to go faster. By 1950, during the 24 Hours of Le Mans, a chap named Louis Rosier was lapping in his Talbot Lago at over 100 miles per hour. And the drum brakes began to, well, melt. They were overheating and would simply stop working. And that's when the engineers at Jaguar, those kings of speed, came up with something new, the disc brake. Instead of a drum, you had an exposed disc. Instead of shoes on the inside, a caliper that squeezed it from both sides, like a vise. It was cooled by the air rushing past it. It was simpler, it was lighter, and it stopped the car with the fury of an angry tax inspector. First, they appeared on the racing Jags, then on the godlike Citroën DS. And soon, the entire world realized this was perfection. So, who actually invented the brake? The answer is, it wasn't one person. It was a relay race of geniuses. The Frenchman who tucked it away inside the wheel, the American who made it all work with fluid, and the British racing engineers who hammered the idea into perfection. And you know what the funny thing is? All of those powerful engines, all of that horsepower, they're completely and utterly useless without brakes. Because it's the brake, that humble, almost invisible part, that gives us the courage to actually step on the gas. It's the invention that truly gave us speed.